know that, because it could have been Arabia or it could have been Babylon, but no one really knows. It's uncertain. One thing we do know is that the Magi's visit, it represents the Messiah's relationship to the Gentile world. It represents the Messiah's relationship to the Gentile world, which represents that God comes to others, and not just a select few. God comes to others. The good news is for every tribe, every nation, every language and people. And the wise men, they seem to just show up mysteriously. And just as mysteriously, they are gone. One thing that I'm certain about is that the number of wise men and women, it increases in every generation as people continue to seek Christ. The question has been posed: what would have happened if there had been 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men? The answer is that being women, they would have asked for directions before commencing their trip. They would have worked out where to go using their UBD, that is, if they held the map up the right way. There would have been numerous toilet stops. And then when they got to the store with all the animals and everything there, they would have helped to deliver baby Jesus. Then they would have cleaned the stable. They would have made a nice vegetarian casserole dish. They would have bought these cute little outfits that baby Jesus could have worn on his trip home. That's the difference between if there would have been wise women instead of wise men. But I want to look at 3 facts today that we can learn from the story of the wise men. The question I'd like to pose this morning is, what makes these wise men so wise? But even more to the point, how can we be just as wise today? How can we be just as wise today? Number 1, a wise man's journey is one of faith. A wise man's journey is one of faith. That's the first fact. Matthew 2, verse 2 reads, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east." They made this inquiry because they saw this extraordinary star that had never been seen before. And so they took this as an indication that an extraordinary person had been born in the land of Judea, over which land the star had been hovering. And so the birth of Christ was notified to these Gentile philosophers by a star. God spoke in their language, and in the best way that they knew, in the best way that they were acquainted with. What would prompt someone to leave the comfort of their homes to go on a dangerous journey? Could it be romance? Yeah. Could it be love? Most definitely. But faith? Could it be faith that set someone out on a dangerous journey? Yes, even sometimes for faith. And so they asked the question, where is he who has been born the King of the Jews? And that's a very probing question. There is no doubt in their language that he had been born. But the question is, to them, where is he? Where is he that has been born? They had seen the star. The evidence was real. Now, where is he? They had faith that he was alive. They had faith that he existed. Now, all they needed to do was to find him. Their purpose was established. Just find him. And so they were willing to risk everything to find him. They were willing to leave the safety of their homes to risk a perilous journey to seek a king. Can you imagine the neighbours' reaction? Are you going on a journey? They're all packed up, cattle's all packed up. Yes. Where are you going? Oh, we don't know for sure. How far is it? Oh, well, we don't know that either. How long are you going to be gone for? Well, we're not quite sure about how long we're going to be away. Boy, for wise men, you fellas really don't know much at all, do you? But they must have said the same things to Abraham when he left his home for the promised land. They must have said the same things to Noah, who was building an ark, even though it had never rained in the history of earth up until that point. They must have said the same kind of things to Peter, Andrew, John, and James when they left their fishing nets to become fishers of men. What? Are you crazy? Are you insane? Are you out of your minds? No, not crazy, not insane, not out of their minds. They were just men of faith. That's what they were. They were men of faith. And so they were wise in their decision to search for Jesus. And they recognized God at work in the world that surrounded them. These wise men, these men of science, and these men who were students of the stars, were brought to a decision to seek out and find the King of the Jews. They didn't have all the facts when they started, but they had enough to know that they needed to search. You see, God gives men enough light that they might search for more. Sometimes we get the idea that the only place that God can speak to us is in church. And that is totally not true. God works through the many circumstances of our life to direct our attention to Him. And quite often, those circumstances involve our place of employment. Moses, he was tending his sheep when he encountered God in a burning bush. Gideon was called to deliver the Israelites from the Midianites when he was harvesting wheat. Peter was cleaning nets after a night of fishing when Jesus said, "Come on, follow me." Matthew was at a table collecting taxes when Jesus said, "Follow me." Wise men were led to follow us at a unique star in their study of astronomy. The fact is, God's journey always involves faith. God's journey always involves faith. I want you to come with me to Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 6. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 6. And it says this: "And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists, and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him." The wise men believed that Jesus existed, and they were rewarded as they earnestly sought for Him. People of faith have been willing to respond to the challenges of the unknown over and over again down throughout history. William Carey, he was a shoemaker and a Baptist, and one day he heard of the millions of people in India who had not heard the good news of Jesus Christ. He believed that the Great Commission to go into all the world and preach the gospel, he believed that that verse was speaking directly to him. So he volunteered to go to India. But he was told, "Young man, sit down. When God wants to convert the heathen, He will do it without your help." And so in 1793, Carey went away anyway, and he supported himself. He supported himself financially. And he started in Bengal, and then he went to Calcutta. For 7 years, he worked without seeing a single convert. By the end of his life, he saw hundreds of churches and thousands of converts. Today, he is known as the father of modern missions. He was a man of faith. These wise men, they were wise in the way that they searched for Jesus. They were determined in their search. It is possible that these men travelled up to 1,000 miles on their trek, which took some time. And I want you to read with me Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. Matthew chapter 2 and verse 16. And it says this: "When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi." In this verse we are told that King Herod decided to kill all boy children 2 years old and younger. So apparently, from the time the star first appeared to the time of locating where Christ was, it took them almost 2 years. Their search was a long and diligent one. That just means that they were determined to search until they found the answer. This wasn't a religious fad. This wasn't a whim of the moment. They would see their search through to the very end. Are you determined like that in your search?
Amen.
They were probably objects of ridicule for chasing a star. Are you ridiculed for following Jesus? You just go on YouTube and you have a look at how Christians are mocked up on that. The world thinks we're foolish for being Christians. But I'd rather spend one day in the courts of the Lord than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked, as the psalmist had said. Perhaps they were ridiculed, but if so, it didn't deter them from their purpose on seeking for the King. Their journey was costly. No doubt it was. They would have had to provide food and lodging for that entire period of time. Did they get tired? They probably did. Were there times of sickness? Did they ever get discouraged? Did they ever feel like quitting? I suspect the answer to all those questions is yes. But this is the thing. They persevered. They persevered. They were probably sick and tired of the heat and the cold and the dust storms and the flies, yet they persevered. Matthew 5 verse 6 reads, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Let me ask you this morning, how hungry are you in your search for God? A wise person's journey involves faith and perseverance. The second point that I want to make is that a wise man's journey is one of worship. When the wise men came on their journey, it was for the purpose of worship. Where is he that is born King of the Jews? And Herod says, and why do you make this inquiry? It is because we have seen the star in the east. So what business do you have with him? What have the men of the east to do with the King of the Jews? And they have their answer ready. We have come to worship him. We have come to worship him. And so they brought with them gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And these gifts have a lot of symbolism associated with them. Gold represents wealth. It is a gift fit for a king. And Jesus was the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Frankincense is the sap of a tree that was dried and hardened, and then it was used as incense to worship God. This was a gift for his deity because Jesus was the Son of God. Myrrh is a fragrant perfume that was used to anoint the dead, to embalm and preserve them. And Jesus was the sacrificial lamb. All these gifts had so much meaning and symbolism associated with it. But there is more to worship than gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The fact is, worship always involves sacrifice. Was there a price to be paid for the wise man's worship? You bet there was. They had given themselves to a journey. Travel in those days was not very comfortable. They weren't on a double-decker bus with air conditioning. It was a very difficult journey, and it could be downright dangerous. And so these wise men, they had sacrificed their own comfort to find the King and worship him. And I want you to come with me and listen to what David had said about sacrifice in 2 Samuel chapter 24, verse 24. Second Samuel 24, verse 24. 2 Samuel chapter 24 and verse 24 says, "But the king replied to Araunah, no, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing." Romans says it this way, chapter 12 verse 1, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship." To truly worship requires sacrifice. The greatest gift, the greatest sacrifice that you can give to God is yourself. You can say, "Oh, but I've given nothing to him today." And I've seen elements of worship, and I've seen elements of sacrifice today. Even today, I believe that you have given something of yourself. First thing you've given today is you've given up your time by being here. You're prepared for a journey this morning. You got up and you got dressed and you got ready to worship your King. You got into your cars, you used your petrol, and you came to church. I didn't, because I just lived at the back.
And the tolls.
and you had the tolls, Nick. By the way, Nick's my first person that I baptised out of Redfern Church. I forgot to tell you about that as well. Some of you, when the offering bags came around, you put the money into the bags to help pay for kingdom expenses of maintaining the church building. Heat, water, electricity, all have to be paid for. And when you put your tithe and your offerings into the bag, you help support God's program. And that includes purchasing Sabbath school material. That includes paying for your ministers' salaries. That's just to mention a few. But when you came today, you came as a living sacrifice. And even though you may not have viewed it as that, you may not even realise it. But that is the efforts you make to worship God. And that is your sacrifice to Him. But that is the fact that I want you all to remember today. What God wants most of all, above everything else, is me. That is our act of worship, to give Him us. He wants your heart. He wants your attention. He wants it 24/7. The question I ask is, what am I willing to give Him? Am I willing to give Him my best? Am I willing to go on a spiritual journey to worship Him? Am I willing to get out of my comfort zone to follow Christ? And the wise men said, yes, I am. Are you? A wise man's journey involves faith and perseverance and worship and sacrifice. And the third point that I want to make to you this morning is that a wise man's journey is one of change. I want you to have a look at verse 12 in Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2. And verse 12. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Other versions say, then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their country another way or another route. It's interesting to note that after they had worshipped Jesus, they could not go back the same way that they had come. I find that to be a fact even today. Once you've met God, you can never go back the same way that you came from. You can never be the same. An encounter with God changes things. It changes you. It has always been that way. Jacob, he wrestled with God, and he was never able to walk the same way for the rest of his life. Isaiah stepped into the presence of God and proclaimed, woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Isaiah was never the same again. In Job, he questions God over and over again concerning his suffering. And when God shows up, Job says this in the Message version. I'm speechless, in awe, words fail me. I should never have opened my mouth. I've talked too much, way too much. I'm ready to shut up and listen. Job met God and he became a changed man. This is what happens when we walk into the presence of God. We become changed. This is what happened to the wise men when they encountered Christ. They were changed. This is what happens when we encounter Christ. Things become different. New purposes, new ambitions. Erica and I had a baby girl, 10 and a half months old now, and it has changed our lives forever. Especially our sleeping patterns. It's Christmas time, and we hear the story of the wise men. They were wise because they had faith. They were wise because they worshipped and they were changed forever, all because of a child. And these men were scholars, but they would complete their learning when they learned of Christ. From a business perspective, Christmas has become the commercial event of the year. And a lot of people feel like Elaine felt, like, people spend the money that they don't have for the things that they do not need. The decorations go up in shops around late October, and they call this the holiday season. According to Time magazine, for many retailers, holiday sales account for as much as 40% of their annual revenue and up to 80% of their profits. The commercialisation of Christmas obscures the meaning of Christ's birth. Christ was born in a humble manger to teach us humility and self-sacrifice. Not to celebrate his birth by eating, drinking, buying and selling and decorating. The good news of the birth of Christ is not about lighting Christmas trees or reindeers and Santa. The good news of Christ's birth centers around a person, God's unspeakable gift, a Saviour who is Christ the Lord. Without the birth of Christ, there would be no baptism. There would be no crucifixion. There would be no resurrection. There would be no ascension. There would be no outpouring of the ministry of the Holy Spirit. There would be no Christ interceding in the heavenly sanctuary for us. And there would be no second coming. We would be lost in capital letters. L-O-S-T. That's why he was born, so that we didn't have to die. He was born so that we could be raised up at the second coming. He was born to give us a second birth. May our celebration of Christ's birth at any time of the year in our daily spiritual exercise may incorporate these essential elements: faith, worship, and sacrifice. The wise men were wise because they had faith. They worshipped and they were changed forever, all because of a child. How about you? Are you looking for a change in your life? Find Christ this Christmas, and I guarantee you that your life will not be the same. It will be changed forever. Things will be different. Step out in faith and seek Him as the wise men did. God bless.